Okay, does the state recognize the presence of law?
Does the state recognize the presence of the jury? And does the defense? Okay, members of the jury, did you heed all of my previous admonitions during the lunch hour? Okay, you may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Birch, I think where we left off was me asking whether or not you proceeded to the vehicle with either Mr. or Mrs. Anthony.
Yes, ma'am.
Before we get to that, when your business sends paperwork to the registered owner, does that paperwork include some instruction on what they need to bring with them?
I believe it does, ma'am, but I wasn't responsible for that.
Okay.
But I believe, yes, it does.
Do you require, do you know that some people or all people bring proof of ownership
Yes, ma'am.
of the vehicle
Yes, ma'am.
and their driver's license or other form of identification?
That's correct.
Okay. Is payment to be made in cash only?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have knowledge as to whether or not the letter instructs how much per day the fees will accrue if the vehicle is to remain for an extended period of time?
I believe it notes the daily storage fee, yes.
Okay. Do you recall what the daily storage fee was at Johnson's Wrecker in June and July of 2008?
Either $20 or $25 a day, I believe.
Now, which of the Anthonys did you go to the vehicle with?
Mr. George Anthony.
Okay. The map, or the aerial, which is, well, it's LG, but it's been introduced into evidence as 33, is still on the display. If I could have that cropped to. Would that cropping of the picture show the area where you would have to travel from to get to the vehicle?
I don't have a picture, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's my fault. Help.
Yes.
All right. If you could tell us sort of the pathway that you would have had to take to the vehicle. It is. It's.
You want the jury to see it?
I.
Just a second. All right. Members of the jury, can you see it? You can't? It's there now. Is it there now? Yes. Okay. Technology.
That's why I have an assistant. Okay. You said that the area where you had to walk from to get to the vehicle is displayed in the cropped portion of the photograph, correct?
To walk to it, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you just sort of give us a pathway where you went?
Sure.
With you said Mr. Anthony, correct?
Yes, ma'am. The back entrance to the office comes out here, and then you walk alongside the office to the main gate, which is locked or closed here, where you open it enough to let someone walk through, and then you escort them back down through here, through a side gate right here, which is also closed, and then walk across the front of the enclosed buildings here to the vehicle here.
All right. Just takes a few seconds to walk over there.
Yeah, 15 seconds, 20 seconds.
Okay. Plus, however much time it takes to
Open the
unlock
gates.
the
The gates are not locked during the day; they're just merely closed.
Okay.
But the gates are visible from all four corners of the office, to be honest.
All right. Did you walk in silence with Mr. Anthony back to this vehicle?
No, ma'am.
All right. What do you recall occurring?
When I opened the gate, I asked who was coming back, and Mr. Anthony said he would. And the first thing he did was apologize for his wife's outbursts. He said they were under a lot of stress, and he apologized profusely. He was very calm, very humble. And I said, that's fine. We're used to it, and we see it day in, day out. So I didn't give it a second thought. And he made some comment to the fact that his granddaughter hadn't been seen for a long time. She was missing, and his daughter wouldn't tell him where she was. And he was just, in my opinion at the time, venting. And I said, I'm sorry, and I didn't engage in conversation. I didn't pry. I just let him vent and say, almost everybody that comes to that yard is not having a good day, and I'm not going to make it worse by aggravating them, so you just let them vent. And he mentioned it, he said something to the effect of, we'll probably get divorced over this, and again, I didn't respond, but he was definitely apologetic, and you could see he was troubled, but nothing that I really...
You just listened?
Yeah.
Okay. So once you got over to the vehicle, what were your observations?
Well, I asked Mr. Anthony if he had the keys, and he said, yes, I have them here. And my full intention was he'd get in the vehicle and start it up and drive it out of the yard. I would imagine as I walked across the yard, I would have indicated how to drive out of the yard, because driving out is a different path from when we walk out. And that was policy, that we'd instruct the customer as we were walking. We'd point them in the direction of where to drive. So that would have come into the conversation, just because that's what we did every time. And
Now,
I expected him to get in the car and drive it away.
okay. Aside from the keys, did you observe whether or not Mr. Anthony had any other items with him?
No, ma'am.
So once you get over to the car, what happens?
Mr. Anthony opened the car and got in the car and attempted to start it, and the car wouldn't start.
Okay.
As he opened the door,
All right. I was going to say, did you have any observations, whether that be sight, sound, or smell, as the door was opened?
sure, as the door was opened, the smell came out very intently. It was almost like you were releasing it into the atmosphere, and it was very potent. It was eye-opening once the car door was opened.
Do you believe that you were able to identify what kind of smell that was?
In the back of my mind, I said to myself, that's the smell of decomposition that I've been exposed to in the past. I didn't say anything to Mr. Anthony about it, other than kind of that's a little ripe, or that's a bit offensive or whatever. But I didn't mention anything to him about it being what I perceived initially to be decomposition.
Why did that pop into your mind? You said it just popped into your mind as soon as you got the strongest force of the odor.
Because I've smelt it before on numerous occasions, including fairly recently. It's not a smell that you forget. It's not something that I've not smelled anything similar to that, other than what it is.
All right. When you're talking about decomposition, are you talking about a deceased human being?
Yes, ma'am.
You said that you didn't say anything about that out loud.
No, ma'am.
Why not?
I don't really know. I guess it's not something you'd throw out there. I guess the gentleman was talking about his granddaughter missing and his daughter missing, and it was obviously a fairly agitated situation. And then the last thing I needed to do was stir it up. I just didn't feel it necessary for me to give him my opinion.
Okay. So you had indicated Mr. Anthony got into the car.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Where did you stick around?
Yeah, I stood right by the vehicle with the driver's door open, and he attempted to start the vehicle.
Okay. What happened at that point?
It turned over, it cranked very healthily, had a very strong battery in it, and it just refused to fire.
Okay. Did you notice at any point whether or not Mr. Anthony had a gas can with him?
Not at that particular time, no.
Okay.
Not at that moment.
How would you have been in a position to note if he had one at all?
I peered into the car while he was trying to start it, and the gas gauge was on E. And so I said to him, it appears that the car might be out of gas. It was giving it the symptoms that with turning over healthily, that it quite possibly could be out of gasoline.
Okay. All right. Perhaps I misunderstood your answer earlier. You said he got into the car turned the ignition. Okay, but the engine didn't go?
No, it cranked over. It turned over. That's
Okay.
the phrase of the engine turning over, but it wouldn't catch. It wouldn't fire. It was obviously not getting either fuel or ignition for some reason, and then the engine wouldn't start. Although the battery was healthy enough for it to turn over fairly respectfully. I didn't believe it was a battery issue.
All right. So once that occurred, what did you say or do?
Mr. Anthony, I believe at that point, said to me, well, I have some gasoline with me. Shall I go and get it? And I said, yes, that'd be fine. So I escorted him back the same path that we came to the vehicle he came in, and he returned with a can of gasoline.
All right. Can you describe that can for us, if you remember?
It was one of the older kinds. I normally wouldn't notice something like a can of gasoline, but it was one of the old metal ones, the round ones. You don't see them very often. It's
Right.
seen better days. It was, you know, not one of the conventional plastic ones that you're used to seeing and have been for the last, I don't know how many years. And especially in my trade, you see them a lot, but the metal ones you don't see very often.
All right. Did you notice whether or not it was battered?
It seemed well worn, certainly.
All right. Did you notice whether or not it had any tape affixed to it?
No, ma'am, I sure didn't.
To that point, had anyone opened up anything besides the driver's door?
No, ma'am, not at that point.
Did you wait for Mr. Anthony to obtain this gas can from wherever?
From his vehicle, yes, ma'am. I waited at the gate for him,
Okay.
and then escorted him back to the vehicle as we'd previously done.
Did you assist him in any way in putting gas into the car?
I don't recall. I doubt it, because it normally wasn't something we'd have done. I would have escorted him back to the car, and he'd have put the gasoline in the car, but I can't recall specifically.
All right. Did he get back into the car and attempt to start it again?
I don't recall if at that point he got into the car, or at that point we decided to open the trunk of the vehicle to see if the odor was emanating from the trunk of something that might have been left in the trunk. I don't recall which
The order.
the order was at that point.
Could you see anything in the passenger compartment of the vehicle that would have suggested to you some source of the odor that you described?
Nothing.
So at some point, regardless of the order, did you suggest that the trunk be opened?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Mr. Anthony have a key to the trunk?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was it opened?
We opened the trunk, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't recall if I opened it or he opened it, but we were both at the back of the vehicle when we opened the trunk.
Okay.
My thought process was that if there's something in here that's making this car smell bad, we can take it out and I'll dispose of it for you in my dumpster rather than you having to. And again, I was just trying to appease the gentleman at the time.
Okay. So when the trunk was opened, were you standing directly behind the car?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Same as Mr. Anthony?
Yes, ma'am. We were side by side.
What were your observations once the trunk was opened?
The odor that came out of the trunk was even more strong than the odor that came out of the vehicle when we opened it. There were a few flies that flew out, and we both looked in the trunk at the same time. I noticed I believe it was a white standard kitchen garbage bag in the trunk of the vehicle.
Okay. Just one or more than one?
Just one, I believe, if I remember rightly.
Okay. Do you have any recollection of items other than a white garbage bag being
No,
in the
ma'am.
trunk?
No, ma'am. Nothing that stood out.
Did either one of you touch that garbage bag?
Yes, ma'am. I don't recall if I suggested or if Mr. Anthony suggested, but we thought it'd be a good idea to look in the garbage bag quick and see if that was maybe an indication of the odor. And at that point, the two of us standing side by side, one or either of us opened the top of the bag up and peered inside.
All right. Do you have any recollection as to whether or not it was one of those flat top garbage bags, or did it have a drawstring pull of some
I
sort?
believe it was a drawstring.
Okay. Was the string drawn and tied to your recollection?
That I don't recall.
Do you recall who actually opened it?
Not specifically, no. We were both involved in it together, and I couldn't tell you if I pulled it open or if he pulled it open. Again, at the time, I was just trying to appease and not really paying.
Okay. Do you have any recollection as to what you saw inside that garbage bag?
I remember seeing what I thought was a pizza box and some papers, nothing to indicate to me that there was any foodstuffs, any kind of amount in there. The bag was very, very light. It didn't weigh, it didn't feel heavy. It didn't feel like there was maybe half a chicken in there or anything like that, or it was quite light. And it appeared that it was just mainly maybe regular household refuse in there that maybe you would take out of a kitchen.
Okay. Did either you or Mr. Anthony put your hands in the bag and sift through every item at that point?
Not really, no. No, it was just a general observation that it appeared that there was nothing at first glance in there that would have created the smell. And I offered just to dispose of it for him.
All right. Did you make a statement of any sort to Mr. Anthony about whether or not the bag was the source of the smell, in your opinion?
No, ma'am.
Did he make any statement to you that you recall about whether or not the bag or any item in the bag was the source of the smell?
No, ma'am.
So what happened to the bag?
I took the bag out of the trunk and I walked across to the short distance to the fence line, if you wish me to.
Okay, let me...
To that fence line right there. And using my left arm, I threw the bag over the fence. And I'm right-handed, and I threw it with my left hand, and it's a 6-foot fence with chain link on top of it. And it was no effort, and it landed on the other side like you'd expect a bag of paper to land on the other side.
All right. You up and over and landed.
Yep. With the intention of when Mr. Anthony drove out in the vehicle, I'd go around and retrieve the bag and place it in our dumpster, and my job would be done, and I'd have taken care of his problem for him.
Okay. Did he get back into the car
Yes, ma'am.
at that point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was that the end of the conversation between the two of you?
Pretty much. Again, he thanked me, and the car started, and he drove it out of the yard in the direction that I told him to drive, and I walked back out the way that we'd come in, and the gate was still closed at this point as per protocol, and I waited for him to drive up the driveway, and I met him at the gate and opened the gate, and again he said, again, I'm sorry, I apologize for the aggravation when we came up here, and I appreciate your help. And he pulled out of the fenced-in area so I could close the gate, and I walked back into the office, and when I went back around into the office, I could see him and Mrs. Anthony conversing outside, and then she got into one car and he stayed in that car and they drove away.
All right. Did you go back to the bag at some point?
At that point, yes, I went back and I recalled that I had to go and pick the bag up. I'd temporarily forgotten about it, and I went and picked the bag up and went and put it in the dumpster. And
Can you circle on the photograph where the dumpster is on the property of Johnson's Wrecker?
right there.
Was that the last you saw of the bag?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Birch. Your Honor, I have no other questions of the witness at this point.
Cross-examination. You may proceed.
Mr. Ray, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Birch.
Good afternoon, sir.
Now, by law, you're required to send out a notice of, I guess, on the 4th day of the car being at your tow yard. Is that not correct?
Yes, sir.
And you testified that the Anthonys had informed you that, well, I guess you had assumed because of the 4th of July holiday, it would have been in the mail that weekend.
That was the assumption we came to, looking at the calendar and the weekends and the holiday, because I'm not aware of when those letters are generated and when they're sent out, that at the time when we were discussing it, it was a way to I guess, justify when they got the mail, and it seemed to be a conclusion between us that was the reason why.
And then they told you they had been out of town for a couple of days?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you also testified that as you were walking to the car, Mr. Anthony informed you his granddaughter was missing.
Words to that effect, yes, sir.
And the car, once you immediately got there, you noticed right away that it was human decomposition.
When the vehicle door was opened, the smell that I was already aware of through, observing the vehicle days earlier became more intense when we opened the vehicle. And that is a smell that is, to me, reminded me of human decomposition, yes, sir.
And Mr. Anthony then got in the car and tried to start the car.
Yes, sir.
And I know you testified earlier that he had first gotten gas. Is that correct?
No, sir. No.
Okay.
He got the gas. We went back to get the gasoline after the car wouldn't start.
Okay.
He
after
attempted
wouldn't
he
start.
attempted to start the car first.
Did you open the trunk before he put the gas in or after?
Like I said, I don't recall the order that went in. It was all at the similar time, so I don't recall that order precisely.
Okay, I wanted to be clear about that because I
Yeah.
thought I heard you testify that first you put in the gas, then
No,
you
sir.
open the trunk.
No, so we tried to start the car first. It cranked and cranked and cranked, indicating it might have been out of gas, and then we went back and got the gasoline.
Now, if I showed you your deposition, would that refresh your recollection as to whether you actually opened the trunk first before he put gas? Would that-
Sure.
Okay. I'm referring to page 35, lines 14 through 20. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you.
Does that refresh your recollection, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So, in fact, what happened first was he gets in, you then open the trunk, you discuss it, he throws out the garbage, and then he tries to start the car. Is that correct?
That's what's in that deposition. So yes, sir, that's what would have happened.
Okay,
It
now
was a lot
we
closer
took-
to the time.
Your deposition was taken in October of 2008, was it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that was much closer in time
Yes, sir.
than, of course, 2011.
Yes, sir.
And that would account for your not being able to remember, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you testified about having experience with smelling human decomposition, right?
Just through my experience in the industry, yes, sir.
And especially, and you have actually unique experience where you've actually worked in sanitation.
Yes, sir.
So you are pretty much the perfect person you have the perfect experience to be able to tell the difference between garbage and human decomposition.
I wouldn't say I was the perfect person, but I've been exposed to both things on numerous occasions.
But you're certainly qualified to be able to discuss about both topics.
I feel my experience is enough to tell me I know the difference between the two. And I've towed hundreds of garbage trucks in my years, too.
Now, when Mr. Anthony showed up and the car wouldn't start, he immediately had the gas cans there at the tow yard. He didn't have to leave, did he?
No, he had the gas cans with him in his other vehicle that he came in, yes, sir.
And it's an old round cylinder gas can.
Yes, sir.
And that's not very common, is it? That people show up with gas cans to the tow yard?
Not really, no, sir. No, we kept a stash of plastic gas cans for people that came that didn't have gas that we'd lend them so they could go and get their own gas. It wasn't common, though.
And within this time, how long would you say you were there with Mr. Anthony with the trunk open before he went and got the gas?
Maybe 5,
5 minutes?
maybe. I
So
don't
you-
recall exactly.
And then when he went to get the gas cans, did you stay at the car?
No, sir. I escorted him back to the gate. We never let anybody on their own in the yard. We escorted them there and back.
And then you came back with him,
Yes, sir.
and then he poured the gas and you were there?
Yes, sir.
And how long would you say in total that you were with him?
Between 5 and 10 minutes. It wouldn't have been long. It's a fairly straightforward process.
Now, as we discussed, you have experience with smelling trash,
Yes, sir.
and you have experience smelling bodies in cars,
Yes, sir.
and you, of course, would never obstruct justice,
No, sir.
and you, of course, would never allow someone to drive a car away if you knew it had evidence of a homicide, would you, sir?
No, sir.
And in fact, you work for Johnson's Tow Yard is the police tow yard for Orange County, is it not?
Yes.
And in many times, you have evidence that you guys tow there.
Yes, sir.
And in fact, this car was evidence in this case, and your company was the one that towed it from the Anthony home.
Yes, sir. After it was recovered from my yard. Yes, sir.
And between the time that this man tells you he's got a missing granddaughter, and you're there for 15 minutes with the car, you never call the police.
No, sir.
In fact, you never call the police after he left.
No, sir.
And the way you found out about this was after it was towed back to you from the police.
It wasn't towed back to us, sir.
The car was picked up by your company.
It was picked up by my company, but it was not towed back to my facility.
I understand. I misspoke. It wasn't until you noticed that this car was a piece of evidence until one of your employees had informed you that this was the same car that you guys had.
Even at that point, I didn't contact the police because at that point it was an investigation that, in my opinion, didn't pertain to me at all. I had no idea why it was towed to forensics.
Okay.
My driver called me and said, "Hey, that car we released, we're towing it to forensics." And I said, "Okay, thank you."
Now, you also lived here in Orlando during that time, obviously.
Yes, sir.
And you were exposed to all of the media coverage in this case, were you not, sir, during that time?
As everybody living in this city was, yes, sir.
In fact, you couldn't avoid it, could you?
Very difficult.
Okay. And when the car was immediately towed and taken to the forensics bay, that was actually on the news as well, was it not, sir?
I'm not aware of that, sir.
Okay. So you didn't witness the car being processed by crime scene evidence as it was broadcasted across
No,
the
sir.
world? No, sir.
Can you just ask that question again?
Sure, I'm sorry. You didn't witness that the car was being processed by crime scene people as it was broadcasted across numerous times.
The following day, and from then on, there was obviously pictures on the news of it in the bay. I saw what everybody else saw on the times that it was on television.
Right. So
Yeah.
you saw it immediately after, not that day, but
Yeah, whenever it was first broadcast, I'm sure, or it was, like you said, it was very hard to ignore it. It was on every news channel.
however, police didn't come and actually take a statement from you until July 24th. Is that not correct, sir?
I couldn't tell you the date specifically, and if you have it written down, then I'm sure that's...
If I show it to you, will that refresh your
Sure.
recollection? May I approach the witness, Judge?
You may.
Thank you.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. And your statement was given on July 24th, 2008,
Okay. Yes, sir.
9 days after you had this experience,
Yes, sir.
and 8 days of media coverage about the car. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And the entire country knowing about a missing child,
Sustained.
You knew there was a missing child on July 24th, 2008,
Yes, sir.
and you knew that it was being broadcasted that there was a foul odor in the trunk of the car,
Yes, sir.
and that it was a significant issue in this case.
Yes, sir.
And the major source for your business was the Orange County Sheriff's Office at the time, was it not?
It was a substantial portion of it. Yes, sir.
In fact, it's a contract that you had with Orange County Sheriff's Department, was it not?
Yes, sir.
Now, I'd like to go back to your interaction with Mr. Anthony. Your form letter, I guess it's a form letter that you send out every four days?
Yes, sir.
You don't actually, you just insert the names? Is that how it works?
Yes, sir.
You don't exactly put down how long, in fact, you would never put down how long a car was at a specific property, would you?
We would have no idea, sir.
Exactly. you'd
Yeah,
have
we
no
would
idea.
not know.
And Mr. Anthony actually informed you that it was there for 3 days, did he not?
He did, sir. He mentioned the fact that it had been at the Amscot for 3 days. It was something he mentioned in conversation. I didn't divulge or react. It was just something that came up in conversation.
And so he knew the car was at Amscot for 3 days, according to you.
As far as I'm aware, yes, sir. Yeah.
And when the Anthonys came to your establishment, they were complaining as to why they hadn't been notified.
Yes, sir.
And they were complaining about the money.
Yes, sir.
And they were complaining why they hadn't been notified before.
Again, they were complaining about why they hadn't been notified. Yes.
If I can just check for a moment, see if I have any questions. Mr. Birch, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Redirect.
Mr. Birch, do you know whether or not the form letter includes some indication about the address from which a car was towed?
I believe it did, yes.
Even though your formal statement to the Orange County Sheriff's Office may have been on July 24th of 2008, you did call them before that time, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
What prompted you to call them?
I called them the following morning, probably around about 6:37, when I was getting ready for work, and the Anthonys were on television being interviewed about their granddaughter being missing and the car being picked up and the proceedings of the previous day. And I called them then.
Okay. To notify them about the garbage bag that you thought at one point it might have still been on the property.
At that point, ma'am,
Sustain. Rephrase the question. Leading.
Okay. Did you think that the garbage bag was still on the property of Johnson's wrecker when you saw the Anthonys on television?
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you attempt to find out if it was still on Johnson's wrecker property?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do?
I went outside of my of the house I was living in on property, and I went to the dumpster, and I opened the dumpster up and jumped in, for want of a better word, and looked for it and pulled through the garbage, thinking that it could be, evidence and important, and I didn't find it.
Okay. Is that when you called the police?
Yes, ma'am. I called the police after that, right at that time.
Okay. Did you inform them at that time that there was a bag on the property that you thought might be important evidence?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
You said that after Mr. Anthony left, you eventually went back, got the bag, and put it in the dumpster.
Fairly soon. I mean, I didn't leave it there for more than a couple of minutes.
Okay. Once the bag was separated from the car for several minutes, did the smell follow the bag?
It didn't appear to.
move to strike.
Overruled.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Any recross as to those issues and those issues alone?
Yes, sir. Mr. Birch, I want to show you what is listed as Defense Exhibit N, just as a calendar.
I'm sorry?
I'm going to show you what's listed as Defense Exhibit N as in Nancy, just as a calendar. Okay. Can you see that from where I'm standing, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Drain Burdick during redirect asked you if your form letter had the address of the location, correct?
And I believe it did, but I'm not the ones that did those form letters.
Okay. So after they would have received the letter, anyone who would receive the letter, it would have the address of the location where the AMSCOT was.
I believe so.
And that person would know where the car is.
Where it is presently?
Yes, or where the car was, I should say.
I believe so.
Okay. And you testified that Mr. Anthony had the keys to the car when he showed up, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, as to the garbage that, actually, let me go back to something that you were just asked. Despite having called the police, you didn't actually give your sworn statement until the 24th, correct?
Correct.
And that's when the detective came out to speak with you.
Correct.
And when you discussed with him the garbage, you had actually discussed with him things that you had heard on television, did you not?
In respect to what?
If I showed you your statement, would that refresh your
Sure.
recollection on that?
Yeah.
Bait stamp 801, Counsel. May I approach the witness?
You may.
Line 2321. Now, when you're talking about the garbage with the detective on the 24th, you actually told him about the pizza box that you had heard about on television, did you not?
Either or.
I'm sorry?
Like it says in the statement, I'm aware that it was there. And as I said earlier, did I categorically say I can remember seeing it in there? It's in my memory banks. It was one of those situations where at the time it wasn't really necessary to process that cleanly. So
But what you're telling the detective as you're describing to him what was in the trunk, in the garbage, you're telling him of something you saw on television.
I told him I thought possibly at the time, and again, the time process had gone on, and remembering whether you see one item in a garbage bag at the time that really wasn't that, to me, wasn't that important.
Right.
I believed, I was having recollections in my mind that it was there, but like I said to the detective at the time, it could be in my mind because I've seen it.
Right. I'm not questioning your memory at the time. What I'm asking you is, as you're having this conversation with him and trying to recall things, you are recollecting what you remember
Yes, sir.
and what you remembered seeing on television.
And trying to separate the two. Yes, sir. Yeah.
And this is basically what you're talking to him about.
Yes, sir.
Comparing it to what you saw on TV and if that helped you remember.
No, sir. What I said to him was, I'm fairly sure I know that there was a pizza box in there, but I can't tell you if I know that because I categorically saw it myself, or if it's because something that's been, that I've picked up having been exposed to it elsewhere. If you ask me to draw a line, I could tell you that 70% of me says, you know what, I'm pretty sure there was one in there. But if you ask me to tell you 100%, I probably couldn't do that.
Right, and I think we're on the same page, but I just want to. It's a bit confusing, and I want to make sure we all understand.
There was a lot of media exposure at the time, and it would be very difficult to, if there was an element of doubt, to be very pinpoint specific about a specific item that at the time would have been insignificant to me.
Because it's kind of hard to separate, if you're looking back, what you see on television and what you actually saw that day?
No, just
Or-
because it wasn't significant enough for me to pay that much attention to. It's a pizza
At that
box.
time.
At that time. It's a pizza box and a garbage bag.
So as you're remembering it back, you're remembering both things you saw on television and things that you remembered, right?
In some respect, but I don't think quite as clear cut as you're making it out to be.
And what you're explaining to the detective is that about the bag because of something you heard on television, but you can't swear that you saw a pizza box in there.
Not 100%, no, sir.
But you had thought you had seen that on television.
A good portion of my memory says, yeah, you know what, that I do believe that was there. I do remember seeing that there, but it's not something I could tell you categorically 100%.
And certainly what you had seen on television was in your thought process because that's why you mentioned it.
I assumed at that point it was.
Thank you, sir.
No other questions.
Okay, may the witness be excused. Thank you, sir. You may be excused. Okay, members of the jury, how you doing? Okay, let's call the next witness.
You call Rudy Anthony.
George A. Anthony, George, middle initial A, Anthony.
You may proceed, Mr. Ashton.
Thank you. Good afternoon again, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
I want to direct your attention to the middle of July of 2008. During that period of time, did you learn that the vehicle that we discussed earlier that you owned, but your daughter drove, had been towed?
Yes.
Tell us how it is you first learned of that fact.
I had learned of that fact for getting a notice from the United States Postal Service that was placed on our front door.
Do you recall when, did you find the notice or did your wife find the notice?
My wife is the one that located the notice at the front door.
And when did she inform you of finding this notice?
I believe it was Sunday, the 13th of July. We had been outside working.
Now, you said you found it on your front door, or she found it. I want to ask you if you didn't find it. So she indicated where she found it.
Yes, at our front door.
Is the front door of your home the door that you normally use for ingress and egress, coming and going normally?
Absolutely not. We go through our garage.
Now, so it was found, you said, on, you believe, Sunday.
Yes.
Do you recall what the notice said?
On the upper right-hand corner, it said the sender's name was Johnson, and it was addressed to both of us. It was a yellow, just a normal United States Postal Service notice that we had a certified letter at the post office.
This was on Sunday. Could you go to the post office on Sunday and retrieve it?
Oh, no.
And at the time you saw it, did you have any idea of what it was or what the certified letter was?
No, because I had looked at the name. I didn't recognize the name of anyone that I knew. And
all right. Now, so did you do anything on Sunday in regards to this picking up this document?
no, I just mentioned to my wife that I would just go see what it was about on Monday.
All right. So Monday came along. Did you do anything about it on Monday?
No, I could not because I just had started a new position with another company and had some work issues to go take care of, and I decided I would go ahead and do it the next day.
Was this the job that you talked about going to the interview for on the 24th?
Yes, I had gotten a
Got
new
the job.
position.
All right. So you didn't go on Monday. On Tuesday, did you have a chance to go and follow up on this letter?
Right. Tuesday morning, I'd awoken. My wife had went to work. I had a couple errands to run, and I decided to go to the post office. And
Overruled.
all right. When you went to the post office, were you able to collect the certified letter?
yes,
Pardon me. Approximately what time was it that you were able to collect the letter?
sometime right about noontime.
Right. When you opened the letter, what was it?
Well, on the envelope itself, I saw Johnson's Towing Service, a local address addressed to my wife and I, and opened it up and noticed that there was a notice that our vehicle had been towed.
Do you remember whether the off the top of your head where the letter said where the vehicle had been towed from or when?
I do remember something about an address and being towed on the 30th of June, 2008.
All right. But you don't right now remember the address?
No, I don't.
Okay. So you get the letter. What goes through your mind when you get this letter saying that it was towed on the 27th? Or
Well,
30th, I'm sorry.
Being concerned because I took a step back second thinking I was believing that this vehicle was at another location, was in my daughter's possession, and it just caught me a little bit off guard, like, why didn't we hear about it prior to this?
Where did you think the vehicle should have been at the time when it was being towed from whatever that location was?
The last I knew was in my daughter's possession, and she was possibly in Jacksonville, Florida with it.
And was that something that you were told by your wife?
Yes.
All right. So you got the letter, read it. What did you do next?
I immediately I called my wife, and I informed her where the vehicle was at, and I said I was on my way to that location to find out more about it.
And did you then travel to Johnson's?
Yes, I arrived at Johnson's Towing probably within just a few minutes because it's not that far away from the post office, and I inquired at the front reception area about our vehicle.
And what were you told?
That there was a normal procedure when a vehicle's towed. This letter gets sent out. I was a little upset about this charge of over $500. We live within a mile and a half of this location. I just asked a bunch of different questions, and yeah, I was a little bit upset because it didn't make any sense to me why we hadn't gotten a notice even quicker, or just a regular phone call like, we have your car.
Was that because it had been, I guess, a little over 2 weeks that the car had been sitting at the wrecker service?
Right, and considering how close it is to our home, it just would seem like a courtesy.
All right. So what did you do next?
I reached out to my wife and explained to her how much it was. And she said that, okay, she says, I'll go ahead and stop at the bank. We'll get the money and we'll go and pick the vehicle up. I said, well, let me go home first. Why don't you come and pick me up, and we'll go down and get the car.
Now, did they tell you that you had to bring any documentation with you to pick up, to reclaim the car?
Well, besides our driver's license for identification, we also had to bring a title or copy of title with us to show ownership.
And is that something that you had with you as you stood there on your first visit, or that's something you had to get?
I had to go back I had to go back home, wait for my wife, and we came back with that.
Right.
That item.
Did you make any assumptions about why the car was left someplace? In other words, what could have happened to have had the car being left someplace?
Overruled. Overruled.
I mean, there's a lot of different things that ran through my mind is why I didn't get a phone call earlier about it, either from the tow yard or possibly even from my daughter. I was just, again, I was at a loss for words. Like,
my question was a little convoluted. Did you bring a gas can from home with you?
just because in the past I've had some experiences with have a vehicle towed or had to go pick a car up from a friend or whatever it might be, and it was always just a common thing to bring some gas along.
And did you bring some gas along on this occasion?
Yes.
All right, so you went home. Did your wife pick you up at your house?
Yes, I waited for my wife. She arrived within a short period of time, and I had the title and some gas, and we went to the tow yard.
And can you tell us what happened when you got to the tow yard?
Well, again, we met with the same receptionist at the front tow yard, at the front glassed-in area, and we were both asked again the same questions over. Why did it take so long to be noticed? Why was it so much money? Sure, we were both very agitated because money for anyone is at a premium anytime, and that $500 some is just something we didn't understand how it could be so expensive.
Right. Did you stay there and talk to the people about the money, or did your wife do that and you did something else? What did you
Both
do?
of us, to a point, did. I do remember a gentleman coming to the front glassed area with the receptionist lady and basically was starting to handle the transaction with us. And I remember we came of some kind of agreement that we would pay a certain amount. It wasn't that exact amount that they first requested to make us happy or just possibly just to get us out of there.
Would it be fair to say that Cindy was rather forceful with the folks that were there?
Well, I believe so. She took more of the conversation because I was, I think, probably more irritated at the inconvenience for both of us having to take time to be there, and it's just a bunch of different things to go through.
Now, so you said a gentleman came to the window. Did you at some point leave with him?
Yes, I'm not sure how long it was. We had the conversation, but I do know that after we had made the transaction to pay for the vehicle, I was escorted to the car.
Now, as you approached the car, and again, by the car, we're referring to, let me not assume, did the gentleman take you to the Pontiac Sunfire, the car your daughter drove?
Yes.
As you approached the vehicle, did you smell anything?
Within somewhere probably close to about a 3-foot area of the passenger side of the car, I did smell a pretty strong odor.
What thought did that odor place into your mind?
I was very concerned about the odor. I had smelled something like that some years prior, and I was concerned.
What thought went through your mind?
That particular smell, whenever you smell it, it's something you never forget. It's a very distinct odor.
But was there a concern that came into your mind as you smelled that odor? Maybe I should be more specific.
My mind did race somewhat to the point because I hadn't seen my daughter or my granddaughter for some time. I did worry that I did worry about for my daughter or my granddaughter, or both at the same time.
Did you have a thought that they might be in the trunk or in the car, dead?
I was hoping that wasn't the case. I was hoping that everything was okay. I didn't want to believe what I was smelling to a point. I was trying to not think too much ahead of myself.
The odor that you were testifying a moment ago that this reminded you of from your past, was that the odor of a human corpse?
Yes.
Now, when you got to the car, did you have keys?
Yes, we have, for each one of our vehicles, we have at least 2 or 3 different sets of keys that we keep for each vehicle. And yes, I did have a set with me.
Was that a spare set?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? All right. So when you got to the car, what did you do?
I had first made a quick look at the car and see if there's any damage to it. I didn't see anything towards the passenger side or walking around to the front of the vehicle. I did reach towards the driver's handle, and I could see the vehicle was locked, and I did put the key in to unlock it, and just made a quick look in hoping that wasn't the case. I was hoping that everything was okay. I didn't want to believe what I was smelling to a point. I was trying to not think too much ahead of myself.
The odor that you were testifying a moment ago that this reminded you of from your past, was that the odor of a human corpse?
Yes.
Now, when you got to the car, did you have keys?
Yes, we have, for each one of our vehicles, we have at least 2 or 3 different sets of keys that we keep for each vehicle. And yes, I did have a set with me.
Was that a spare set?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? All right. So when you got to the car, what did you do?
I had first made a quick look at the car and see if there's any damage to it. I didn't see anything towards the passenger side or walking around to the front of the vehicle. I did reach towards the driver's handle, and I knew I could see the vehicle was locked, and I did put the key in to unlock it, and just made a quick look inside the interior of the car, the front seats, the back seat.
When you opened the driver's side door, was the odor more intense?
Yes.
Now, looking inside the car, did you see any blood or any indication of anyone having been injured within the car?
No.
Did that make you feel better?
It relieved me a little bit to know that I could not see anything in there as far as my daughter or granddaughter inside. Yes.
Did you then, either you or the gentleman you were with, use the keys to open the trunk?
Before we even did that, if I might tell you what I did prior to
go right
that,
ahead.
I did reach over to the passenger side window, and I did roll it down, and I did try to start the car almost immediately at that point, and it would turn over very quickly. And I do remember it was either myself or the gentleman in tow yard at the same time talking about the car turning over, and I said, well, looks like it's out of gas. I think he said it probably at the same time.
Okay. All right. And what did you do then?
Got out of the car, and I went back to the trunk of the car. As a matter of fact, as I'm walking back, I'm still looking for any kind of damage on the car at all. And I unlocked just prior to me unlocking the trunk, I don't know if I said it in a high whisper or just a real low tone voice, but I just said, please, God, don't let this be Casey or Kaylee.
By that you mean in the trunk?
Yes.
And when you opened the trunk, what did you find?
I opened the trunk, and towards the left side of the rear tail light, and right there, I saw a white bag, and inside the bag I saw a pizza box. I observed maggots myself, a Arm & Hammer plastic container that's liquid for clothing, and there were some other items in there. I did not touch it.
Now let me ask you a question. When the trunk was opened, was the garbage bag opened such that you could see these items without removing it or opening it?
Oh, slightly. I mean, it wasn't pulled exactly tight. I mean, probably within maybe a 2 or 3 inch circumference. I'm just going by what memory that I have
Sure.
of that.
Now, at some point, did someone remove the bag from the trunk and open it more to kind of look at what was inside?
All I remember is the tow operator, the gentleman who was with me, he stated to me, he said, well, this has got to be the smell of your car. And he reached inside, and he's the one that grabbed it and pulled it out.
Now, when you opened the trunk and there was no body in there and there was garbage there, how did you feel?
Relieved, looked up, thank God. I felt more relieved that what my senses were telling me wasn't true. I mean, it wasn't the worst that I was thinking.
You didn't find the body in the trunk that you were expecting?
No, I didn't find my granddaughter or my daughter there, so I was very thankful.
So at that point, the gentleman, you said, removed the bag of garbage. Now, you've given us a description of what was in the bag. You said there was a pizza box and an Arm & Hammer bottle, but how were you able to see that through a 2 or 3 inch opening?
Well, because the bag itself was like a white or vanilla color. It was almost transparent, and I could see the makings of a pizza box. In fact, I could see the Z and the A on pizza.
Okay.
And the Arm & Hammer is very distinctive because it's a yellow container. I think it's like a 64-ounce container or something. I've used that size before. I mean, I knew of that product.
You could sort of see it through the translucent plastic. Is that
Yes.
what you're saying? All right. So now, but you did not actually pick up the bag, correct?
I never touched the bag.
So you don't know how heavy it was or anything?
No, sir, I do not.
Do you recall what the gentleman did with the bag?
After he had reached in and made the comment again about this being the smell, or he believed that was the smell, he walked over towards a dumpster, and as far as I know, he tossed it in there. I wasn't really observing him about how far it was or anything like that. I know he's the one that tossed it away.
Now, after he, okay, so he tossed the trash out. What happens next?
I remember going back to our other vehicle we'd driven, that my wife and I had driven in, and gotten gas. Came back, put gas in the car with the tow operator with us, or with me. Started the car. I remember it starting to rain that day. I kept the windows down a little bit and drove it to where my wife was at the front gates, and probably within a few minutes we left.
Now, when you put gas in the car, got back in and drove it, the garbage bag was already out. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was the smell out?
No, the smell was still very strong.
Did you have to go to an extraordinary efforts to be able to drive the car and stand the smell?
I drove pretty much home, which, like I said, which is in a mile, maybe a mile and a half from our home, with the windows practically all the way down.
Could you have driven the car with the windows up because of the smell? Or?
Oh, absolutely not. No, there'd been no way.
All right. So as you were driving out, you said you met up with your wife at the gate.
Yes.
Did you comment to her about the smell at all? Do you recall?
I don't know if I commented at that point. All I remember is telling her, I says, we need to get this car home. I just want to get out of here. I just was in an emotional state at that time. I just wanted to get going. I just wanted to leave that area.
Now, let me ask you sort of a preface question. We talked about on the 24th that you indicated, I believe, that you weren't all that concerned about Kaylee being missing on the 24th. Was your emotion in terms of your concern about Kaylee and maybe Casey greater on the 15th when you were dealing with the car? Were you more worried?
If you're talking about me going back to the 24th of June till July 15th, oh yeah, my feelings got a little bit more strong because I had not seen Kaylee since the 16th of June. The last time I saw Casey was the 24th of June. And I had a lot more concern about not seeing them.
Do you recall when you were walking with the tow truck manager, the gentleman that escorted you to the car, commenting to him about, Kaylee or Casey or your concerns? Do you recall if you did?
We probably had some conversation. I don't remember the exact extent of it. I probably did mention something about my daughter and granddaughter. I probably did. That conversation I do not exactly remember today.
If you don't, that's fine. So, when you got home, approximately what time of day was it?
I would say roughly maybe 2 o'clock or shortly thereafter.
So when you got home, what did you do?
Well, my wife followed me home. I immediately pulled into our garage and opened up the sunroof on the car, the windows, the hood, the trunk.
Why did you open all the windows and trunk and the sunroof?
To air the car out, to try to diffuse that, that smell. Plus, it was raining outside. I couldn't leave the car outside in the rain.
Sure. All right. So you opened the car up to try and air out this smell.
Yes.
What else did you do?
Had some conversation with my wife about why the vehicle was there, why we haven't talked to Casey, worrying about Kaylee. there was just a bunch of different things that we talked about. Also being worried about going to my new job. I mean, it's just a bunch of different things that we conversed about.
Now, at either the tow yard or when you got back to the house, did you notice before I ask, let me preface with this. Did you have a role in maintaining your daughter's car traditionally?
I was the one who washed all the cars and vacuumed them during, basically I usually did it on a weekend for all of our vehicles. Even when my son used to live with us, I did his car too.
So would you regularly, prior to June 16th, obviously the last time you saw Casey, but prior to that, would you normally have maintained the car, vacuumed it, cleaned it, all that kind of thing?
Oh yes, changed oil, rotated tires. That was my thing to do.
That was dad stuff.
Yes.
Now, when either at the tow yard or when you got back to the house, did you notice a stain on the spare tire cover in the trunk that you had never seen before?
I noticed a slight circular type stain about where the spare tire was at. I mean, it was slight, but I did notice something, and yes.
And you said it was a slight stain. I mean, how visible was it? Was it fairly subtle, or?
It was somewhat subtle. I mean, it wasn't anything like it was black or anything like that in color. I mean, it was something subtle that I could see. It was just probably about the size of a basketball. I'm just roughly guessing on size.
And if you can help us out with this, did it look like there had been some liquid spilled on it or fluid spilled on it, something like that kind of stain, or like a... I didn't finish the question, actually.
Mr. Anthony, before you answer the question, don't answer it until I tell you to answer it. Finish your question, Mr. Ashton.
The rest of the question was, or was it something that looked like something like powdery on the surface?
Mr. Byers, you have an objection?
Yes, I would object to leading.
Objection over the room. You may answer the question.
If you can, sir.
To me, it was just a circular motion. I mean, I'll say, but it was just almost like a circle size, like it's like basketball. As far as it being liquidy or powdery, no, that I couldn't really say for sure. No.
All right, fair enough. Now, the interior of the car, you told us you looked into it, you also drove it. Did the interior of the car appear to be in a normal condition?
Oh, absolutely not. The car is messy inside.
Maybe by your standards. Let me just show you a couple of photographs. If we could have, let me see if this is going to work here. Apparently my controller is not wanting to function. Okay, well, I think I've got it. Hold on. Let me see. Okay. All right, thank you. It is working now. If I could have State's Exhibit Identification I. Oh, did I switch it to? I thought it was the other way around. Okay, thank you. Sir, can you see the photograph before you?
Yes.
All right. Do you recognize what it's a photograph of?
It appears to be the inside of our Pontiac Sunfire.
Is that, and that appears to be the sort of through the passenger door, but of the passenger seat and a few items on the
Yes.
seat. Does that fairly and accurately depict the appearance of the car when you picked it up at the tow yard, as far as what was in the car and its general state?
Yes.
This time you ought to move into evidence State's Exhibit I for identification.
What says the defense?
No objections.
It will be admitted into evidence. It states numbered.
May I publish?
You may publish.
This thing is being stubborn again. There we go. Now, the items in this we see appear to be is that a CD case in the middle there of the seat?
Yes.
Looks like a pair of sunglasses.
Yes.
And what do you know what that brown thing is? Do you remember?
Looks like a brown belt.
All right. As far as the rest of the car goes, it's a level of cleanliness that is the way it appeared that day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, please, unpublish it for me, Judge. Thank you. All right, if we could go to State's Exhibit J. All right, sir, do you see State's Exhibit J on your screen?
Yes.
Right. And you recognize this as a photograph of the back seat of the Pontiac Sunfire.
Yes.
And does that fairly and accurately depict the appearance of the back seat when you picked it up from Johnson's record?
Yes.
This time, you ought to move into evidence State's Exhibit J for identification.
What says the defense?
Objections, Judge.
It would be admitted as states numbered.
And let me see if I can publish. May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to do it. This is not cooperating. All right, so, sir, what we see here is appears to be a child's car seat.
Yes.
Do you recognize that as being the car seat that Kaylee would traditionally use when riding in her mother's car?
Yes.
And I believe there appear to be a pair of shoes or two back there. Is that what that is?
Looks like a pair of black high heel shoes.
Okay. And again, in terms of relative cleanliness, that's how it appeared that day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, in addition to the garbage bag that was in the trunk, do you recall either from your view at the tow yard or when you got it home if there were other things in the trunk?
At this time, I can't remember what else might have been in the trunk. I really don't remember.
So when you got the car home, did you then go to work?
Probably within maybe a half hour to 40 minutes. I know my schedule generally started at 3 o'clock, and Cindy was concerned because of my new job. I was concerned too, and it was a sort of a double-edged sword that day for me to go into work because I didn't want to leave, but at least wanted to make an appearance anyhow at work. So yes, I did go to work.
Did Cindy indicate that she was going to take any action based upon finding this car and all the facts that you've told us? What was her plan of action, if she stated one, for the rest of that day?
No answer.
Yes.
What was that plan?
That she would try to get a hold of Casey.
No further questions at this time, subject to recall.
Mr. Anthony, you testified that you received the notice from the tow yard on what day?
It was found at our front door on July 13th.
Your Honor, may I have the witness stand down?
Yes.
Can you please mark for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the date and write tow yard receipt? You may have a seat, sir. Now, you heard Mr. Birch testify that the receipt was sent out.
Testimony of another.
Let him finish the question, Mr. Anthony. Before you answer the question, don't answer it unless I tell you to.
I'll rephrase it.
You may finish the question.
Yes, sir. I'll rephrase it, Judge.
Okay.
Mr. Anthony, you're aware that the letter was sent from the tow yard company around the 4th of July. Is that correct?
Question, sir.
I presume it was. I'll say yes.
Okay. So that would have arrived more or less at your home on July 7th.
Speculation, and I do have an additional objection at the bench.
As to speculation, it'll be sustained.
You testified that the tow yard is 1.5 miles from your home.
Roughly, yes.
In your experience, sir, do you know how long the mail takes to get from 1.5 miles if someone sent you a letter? If you know, sir.
Overall, he can say how long it takes him to get mail.
I have no idea how long it would take. I can't answer that honestly. I don't know.
You have no idea. You can't assist the ladies and gentlemen in the jury in telling how long it takes to get a letter from 1.5 miles away?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Now, this was not noticed, and you testified that Cindy's the one that found the letter, or the notice, I should say.
Yes.
And where exactly was this notice placed?
The notice was placed at our front door.
So, where exactly on the front door, if you can explain?
I didn't see the exact location, but I'm thinking that was placed possibly in the crease of our screen, our front glass door, and our inner door.
And the entire week of July 6th through the 12th, you never used your front door?
No, sir, we do not use our front door that's not our main entrance.
And you also could never see that notice from the street?
No, sir.
Okay. And were there any other documents or papers on the door?
No.
Just that one piece of, I guess, orange piece of paper?
If I'm not mistaken, it's like a yellowish in color, real light vanilla yellowish in color.
Okay.
Not a postal service.
And it is you who usually gets the mail, right?
Yes, we have residential mail delivered down the street.
And Cindy works pretty early. She leaves the house early and comes home later in the early evening hours, correct?
5, 6 o'clock, I believe that was her general schedule.
And you're home all day and leave roughly around 3 in the afternoon.
No, about 2 or 2:15, right around in there.
Okay. You testified that your work was 10 minutes away?
At the time this started to occur, I just had finished up with one position, and I started working for another new company.
And generally, you pick up the mail.
The mails, if I might answer your question and just give you a little bit of information, that I have no control of what time the mail service is delivered. Sometimes it can be delivered in the early afternoon. It might not be till later in the afternoon. I have no control over that.
I didn't ask if you had control over it, sir. I asked you if you generally pick up the mail.
Yes.
Now, have you ever gotten one of these notices before?
Oh, numerous times over the years.
Okay. And have you ever had problems with the post office as to them failing to deliver things to you?
Not that I can remember, no.
And this entire week, after you weren't home, or were you home that week during the day? I should ask you that first.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe my wife was on vacation that week, or we had spent some additional time together away from work. But as far as going to the front door every day, I don't do that.
You spent the night, every night, at 4937 Hope Spring Drive between July 6th to July 12th, correct?
I believe so. Yes, I'm sure we did.
And that entire week, if it had arrived earlier, well, let me strike that. That entire week, all you got is one notice.
I don't remember all the mail that we got for that week.
My question to you, sir, is That entire week, all you got was one notice that your car was towed.
Yes.
You didn't get a notice the second day saying, hey, you haven't picked up this. This is your second notice from the post office, did you?
Not in evidence that a second notice was sent.
Sustained.
May I rephrase the question, Judge?
You may.
You never received a second notice from the post office.
Sustained.
Are you aware if a second notice ever arrived at your home?
No.
Are you aware if a third notice ever arrived at your home?
No.
Are you aware if you received something that said final notice?
It's a fact,
That's right.
not in evidence.
Sustained.
Are you aware if you got any other notices, sir?
Assumes a fact, not in evidence.
Overruled as to that question.
You'd like to ask me that again, since there was...
Are you aware if you received any final notice at your home?
Are you aware if you got any other notices?
I'm sorry, Judge. Are you aware if you received any other notices at your home?
No.
So the only notice that was delivered, as far as you're aware, to your home that entire week was one notice.
Yes.
And you can clearly see the front door of your home from the street, can you not?
Yes.
It's not backed off in a corner or anything.
It's back off the road somewhat. I mean, we have almost like a U-shaped home, I guess, to a point, or C-shaped home. Our front door is back a little bit, set in.
You can see the front door if you're standing in your driveway, can you not?
Basically, yes.
Now, when you testified under direct, I didn't hear you say that you had actually called Amscott on that day. Did you, sir?
I wasn't asked that question.
I'm asking you now. Did you, sir?
I know I called Amscott later that afternoon after I got into my work. After I inquired about the car. I did.
After you got after you got to work, you said?
Yes, I think it was shortly in the early evening. I was curious about that.
And this was after you drove the car home and went to work?
Yes.
Okay. Did you call Mr. Birch afterwards to let him know that you called the Amscott?
No.
So there's no way Mr. Birch would have known that you called Amscott.
Correct.
And there's no way that Mr. Birch would know that you were aware that the car had been there for 3 days.
Objection assumes a fact, not in evidence. Witness hasn't been asked any of that.
Sustained.
Did you tell Mr. Birch that the car had been there for 3 days?
No.
Now, you testified that you went home and were waiting for Cindy to meet you to go to the tow yard, correct?
Yes.
And that you had taken gas cans because that's what you usually do.
A past experience told me to take some gas and along with the other identification I would need for the car. Yes.
And what tow yard have you ever gone to pick up a car with gas cans?
I've been to I don't know how many tow yards in my life to pick up a car through their friend or through a family business. So, I mean, I'm very knowledgeable of what to do.
And you just had lucky thinking that the car was going to be out of gas?
Objection. Argumentative. Move to strike.
Mr. Baez.
I don't think it's argumentative, Judge.
Sustain.
Was it a lucky guess, sir? That the
Same
car.
objection.
Sustain.
It was a fortunate guess that the car was out of gas.
Same objection. Same question.
I'll
Sustain.
move on, Judge. Did the gas can that you took to the tow yard have duct tape on it?
I don't remember which gas can I took with me. I don't.
Did you take the round cylinder gas can that was 20 years old with you?
I don't remember which gas can I took, sir.
So, because you don't remember that, you certainly don't remember if at that point in time you didn't, that gas can didn't have duct tape on it at that time.
Sir, I don't remember what gas can I took
My question
that,
to you,
that particular day. I don't
my
remember.
question to you, sir, is at that point in time, you have no recollection as to whether on June 15, 2008, that gas can, the round cylinder for 20 years that you've had duct tape on it.
Would you like to repeat the date that you just told
July
me, sir?
15, 2008, when you went to the tow yard with the gas can, do you know if the round cylinder gas tank that you've had for 20 years had duct tape on it?
I don't remember what gas can I took with me, sir.
I'm not asking you which one you took with you, sir. I'm asking you, did the round cylinder gas can that you've had for 20 years have duct tape on it on July 15, 2008?
Ask and answer to the best of his ability.
Sustain.
Your Honor, I think the witness said he doesn't recall which gas cans he took. I'm asking him a
That's the
separate question.
precise problem. He said he doesn't know which one he took, and you asked him for a particularized gas can.
Correct. And I'm asking him at that time.
And he said he didn't know which one he took.
Now, you hadn't spoken to Casey since June 24th, correct?
The last time I saw Casey was June 24th, yes.
My question to you was, you hadn't spoken to Casey since June 24th, 2008.
To the best of my recollection, yes. I don't know if we would text or anything at that particular time. I don't know. I don't remember. But the last time I saw her was the 24th of June and talked to her.
As far as you can remember, it had been three and a half weeks since you spoke to your daughter?
Yes.
And when you arrived at the tow yard, you were very concerned for your granddaughter,
Yes.
the most precious thing in your life,
Yes.
the two most precious things in your life.
Yes.
In fact, you were telling people about your missing granddaughter.
No.
You didn't tell anyone at the tow yard that your granddaughter was missing.
If I'm not mistaken, through maybe some small conversation or whatever I talked to the tow operator was, I hadn't seen my granddaughter or my daughter.
You
I
told,
did not know my granddaughter was missing, sir, at that time.
you told people at the tow yard that you were concerned for your granddaughter's well-being.
I believe, sir, that I've said is I hadn't seen my granddaughter or my daughter. Yeah, I'm concerned for them, yeah, because I haven't seen them.
And you were concerned about their well-being.
Yes, sir.
And you were telling people this at the tow yard.
I can only think of one person, and I told them that was the tow gentleman, the manager that was there.
And that was before you ever got to the car.
If we had that conversation prior to that I don't remember. If we had some small talk going in there, I don't remember that conversation.
And this is after the July 3rd weekend, or the 4th of July weekend, when your son Lee had gone to downtown to look for Casey.
Well, the 15th of July, yes, is definitely after the 4th of July. Yes, sir. I'll agree.
So there were active participation on behalf of your wife and your son to find Casey.
Yes, sir.
And at this point in your life, on this day, you're distraught, concerned.
Concerned? Yes.
In fact, you told Mr. Ashton that you were at an elevated state, of course, because as compared to the 24th.
I was a lot more concerned than I was on the 24th, yes.
And when you got into the car, you smelled the smell of human decomposition.
Yes.
A smell you never forget.
Correct. Yes.
A distinctive smell.
Yes.
One that you have smelled as a detective many times.
Yes.
And when you got in that car, you asked, before you opened the trunk, you asked Mr. Birch to walk around with you and open the trunk with you.
I did not ask him to come around to the back of the car with me, no, sir.
Do you recall giving a statement to law enforcement on July 24th, sir, of 2008?
I've given statements, yes, to the Sheriff's Department before, yes.
Page 23, counsel. Lines 20 and 21. Did you make the statement, sir? Will you please walk around? I told the guy, will you please walk around to the back of the car?
Just a second. Mr. Ashton?
90.8 of 108, I'd ask that the council read the entire paragraph in their statement.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I will be more than happy to. Did you make the statement? You know that I smell, I'm like, oh God. I tried to start the car for a second time and I said, no, George, there's something wrong. You got to find out now. You can't take it away.
Your Honor, objection. Could we approach?
Yes.
May I begin again, Your Honor?
You ready? You ready? You may proceed.
You know I've smelled like, you know, and I smell and I'm like, oh God. I tried to start the car for a second and I said, no, George, if there's something wrong, you need to find out now. You can't take it away. I told the guy, I said, will you please walk around to the back of the car and look inside this with me? Do you recall making that statement, sir?
That's probably what I said. I don't remember saying that, but if that's what I said to law enforcement at the time, it probably was the truth.
And the reason you wanted him to walk around the back with you is because you wanted a witness.
I guess that could be a true statement.
You wanted to distance yourself from all of this.
Objection, objection, argumentative. Pardon me, objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
You wanted to distance yourself from all of this.
I don't understand what you mean by distance myself, sir. I don't understand what you mean.
You didn't want to be associated with any evidence in this case, did you, sir?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
If I might answer your question a little bit in length.
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay.
But please answer the question.
Okay, I will. I did not know at that time that my granddaughter and daughter where my granddaughter was missing or my daughter was not available to be found. I didn't know that, anything like that. As far as asking someone to go to the rear of a vehicle with me, if I did ask him that, then I must have asked him that. Was I trying to distance myself from something? No. If there was something wrong and I needed to get to the bottom of it, I would have been a stand-up guy and would have taken care of it. I would have not walked away or ran away from something if I really thought there was something really, really bad there. No, sir, that's not my makeup.
Because you're a stand-up guy.
I believe I am. I think I'm a pretty good guy.
And now, once you had your witness and your granddaughter's missing, and you smell that smell that you never forget, the trunk is opened.
Objection. Argument. Move to strike. Counsel's editorial commentary.
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
You then open the trunk.
Yes, I opened the trunk.
And you smell the smell of human decomposition.
I already had the smell, sir, and I opened up the trunk with this gentleman alongside with me to see what was back there.
And you smelled a more pungent smell of human decomposition.
To be honest, at that point, all I found, sir, in the back of the trunk of the car was a bag full of garbage.
Let me go back for a moment. Prior to you opening that trunk, you said a silent prayer.
I probably did.
And you said, under your breath, lightly audible, "Oh, please don't let this be my Casey or Kaylee."
Yes, I already had said that. Yes, sir.
And then you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition.
Sir, I already had smelled it prior to getting into the car and inside the car.
My question to you, sir, is you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition at that point.
What are you referring to, sir? I'm trying to answer your question.
Once you opened the trunk, sir, you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition.
When I opened up the trunk, sir, I just answered your question. I'm answering it a second time. All I found in the back of the trunk of that car was a plastic bag with garbage inside of it. That's what I found, sir.
I'm not asking you what you found, sir. I asked you if when you opened the trunk, you smelled an even stronger smell of human decomposition.
No.
It got weaker.
No.
I'm sorry?
Sir, I've already answered your question. I don't know how many times I've answered in the most popular and polite way that I can. I'm not going to get upset over that with you, sir. You know, if you're trying to trick me, you're not going to trick me. I know what's in the back of that car, and I know what the tow manager pulled out.
My question to you, sir, is
Answered you.
Is it your testimony that when you opened the trunk of that car, the smell of human decomposition was not stronger?
At that point, all I seen, or only thing I smelled, or only thing I saw at that time was a bag full of garbage.
I'm not asking you what you saw, sir. I'm asking you what you smelled. And if you...
Come on.
Mr. Ashton can't help you, sir.
Yes. Question.
You're pandering.
No. Question.
It really calls for a yes or no answer. When you opened the trunk of that car, did you smell a stronger smell of human decomposition?
I'm going to answer you again for the fourth time. No.
Okay. Now, you talked about how your experience as a detective allowed you to recognize the smell. Correct?
You're the one who brought up my experience, sir, not me. Not I.
Have you testified that as a police officer, you smelled that smell before?
Yes, sir, I have.
And you testified under direct examination that you didn't touch the bag.
I did not touch that garbage bag at all.
Because you know better than to touch any potential evidence.
I didn't know it would be evidence at this time.
And at that point, when you have been telling Mr. Birch about your missing granddaughter, and you haven't seen your daughter in almost 3 weeks or spoken to her, and you smell that smell in that car, is that when you called 911?
I never called 911.
A young woman that you have, your child, is missing, correct?
My daughter, I didn't know where my daughter was at on that date.
And you're smelling her car that smells like a dead body, and you don't call the police.
No, sir, I did not.
And you don't call your daughter to see if she's okay.
I didn't call my daughter at that time.
And you don't call your daughter to see if Kaylee's okay.
I didn't call my daughter to inquire about her or Kaylee at that time. I did not.
And as a detective, you know that if you smell a dead body in a car, that's a potential crime scene.
At the time, sir, I wasn't a detective. I am just a father and a grandfather.
As a former detective, as a father, a grandfather, a human being, you're intelligent enough to know that if you smell human decomposition in a car and you have people in your life that are missing, you call the police, don't you, sir?
Objection. Argumentative. Question
Overruled.
asked and answered.
Overruled. We can answer the question.
Looking back, sir, there's a lot of things I wish I could have done and I didn't do. So that's on me.
You call the police, don't you, sir?
Objection. Argumentative. Asked and answered.
Sustained.
You are familiar enough with evidence to know that if you move that car, that you may be destroying potential evidence, don't you, sir?
If that would have been viewed as evidence at that time, all I was thinking about was getting that car out of the tow yard. That was my objective at that time, and finding garbage in the back seat and in the rear, in the trunk area of it.
Did you understand my question, sir?
Yes, sir. I understand it.
Can you please answer it?
You'd like to rephrase it and ask me again? I'd be more than glad to answer it.
You, as a former police officer, know that if you move that car, you're destroying potential evidence.
If I would have thought it was evidence at the time, probably. I didn't believe it was evidence at the time.
And you are no longer concerned about your missing granddaughter.
I was always concerned about my granddaughter, her well-being, where she was at, and my daughter.
And you then drive the car home.
Yes.
You air it out.
Yes.
And you go to work.
Yes.
And you don't call the police from your home.
I did not.
You don't go to work and call the police.
I did not.
You don't tell any of the other security officers at your job, you know, that car smelled like a dead body and I haven't seen my granddaughter in 30 days.
Answered. Argumentative.
Sustained.
You don't tell anyone about your granddaughter being missing at work, do you, sir?
Objection. Asked and answered. Argumentative.
I haven't asked that question.
Overruled.
I didn't mention anything about my personal life to anyone at work. I didn't at that point.
Now, on on that same evening, the police arrived at your home.
Yes.
And that's as a result of your wife calling the police.
Objection. Exceeds the scope of direct.
Sustained.
Since we're talking about the smell of the car, that evening you immediately told law enforcement of the smell, did you not?
Exceeds the scope.
Sustained.
Judge, I would cite Blue v. State at this point. Did you have a conversation, did you ever go after this day to law enforcement to have a private discussion with law enforcement about this car, about the smell of this car?
I don't know if I did or not. I know the car was at our home and towed from our home.
On July 24th, the same statement we had discussed previously, did you go there and did not want your wife or your son to know you were meeting with law enforcement?
Objection. Exceeds the scope of direct.
Overruled at this point.
Anything that I could do to find my granddaughter and or my daughter, I was reaching out any way I could and giving information or having information given back to me to find my granddaughter. I didn't see anything what's wrong with that.
So the answer to my question is yes, sir. You did meet with them secretly?
I don't know if the word secretly or we contacted each other somewhere or whatever, but sure, I'd do anything I could to bring my granddaughter home.
You told them you didn't want your wife or your son to know you were there, didn't you,
The
sir?
scope of direct.
Sustained.
When you went and met with them on this date, you told them about your experience in the smell and smelling that car.
I believe that was part of their investigation.
And do you remember exactly what you said to them, sir, about the smell and your experience in smelling that car?
No, I do not know exactly what we talked about at that time.
Would it refresh your recollection if I showed you the transcript, sir?
Yes?
May I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm showing the witness page 23, lines 2 through 4. You told them, sir, about your experience.
Objection. Hearsay. Not inconsistent.
Oh, excuse me. Does that refresh your recollection, sir?
We approach that.
No, not right now.
As far as what my experience would have been, I mean, in that short little section that you showed me right there, sure, I believe I answered that, yes, I had a smell like that outside in the woods, in a house, in a car. I mean, that's, sure, I'll agree.
And this is 6 months before your granddaughter is found in the woods.
Objection. Hearsay. We approach.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, you may proceed.
Mr. Anthony, the reason you drove that car home and didn't call the police and went to work is because you knew Kaylee was dead already. Didn't you, sir?
He can answer that question.
No, I did not.
And you knew, sir, that if you distanced yourself and was at work, that you would be the last person questioned about the death of Kaylee. Didn't you, sir?
No, sir.
You know, as a former detective, that the best way to not be questioned or to not make statements about a case is to be as far away removed as possible, didn't you, sir?
Sustain as to that question.
Judge, we will recall this witness at a later time.
Okay. Any redirect, Mr. Ashton?
What date was that certified mail receipt placed on your door?
If I'm not it had to have been before Sunday, so I'm just,
You don't know, do you?
I really don't know. I'm presuming it should have been a few days prior to that. I don't know.
Now, I want to follow up on some of Mr. Baez's questions to you.
Commentary?
Overruled.
He asked you about distancing yourself from a piece of evidence in this case. Remember that question?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Judge, I can't hear Mr. Ashton.
I'll go back over. Mr. Baez asked you a question about distancing yourself from evidence in this case. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
Well, let me tell you a hypothetical. If Kaylee Anthony drowned, and then you took her body out of that house and disposed of in a field, then
Yes.
Leading?
He hasn't finished asking the question. It's hypothetical. Mr. Anthony, before you answer the question, don't answer the question until I tell you to. And then at the conclusion of the question, you have an opportunity to object, Mr. Baez. Continue.
if you took that little girl's body and took it down and dumped it in the swamp, then there'd be no evidence in her car, would there?
Objection, Judge. Outside the scope.
Overruled.
There wouldn't be, would there?
No, sir, there wouldn't be.
So it would be nothing for you to run away from, would there?
Judge, leading.
Withdrawn.
Okay, may the witness stand down. Mr. Baez? Yes, sir. What? Can he stand down? That was what I asked. Okay, Mr. Anthony, you may step down. State may call the next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state would, at this time, would recall Anthony Lazaro.
Raise your hand up. Solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth and the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
This way, sir.
Okay, let's do your name again.
Anthony Lazaro, ANTHONY LAZZARO.
You may proceed, Mr. George.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Mr. Lazaro.
Afternoon.
Does L7 tone mean anything to you?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
That is an AOL Instant Messenger name.
The L7 tone, is that a particular name?
7's a lucky number. L should be abbreviate my last name. And tone is a DJ name.
All right. So is L7 tone you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you ever have instant messages with Casey Anthony?
Yes, sir.
And when you had those instant messages with her, what was her name?
Casey O'Marie.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Lazaro, I'm showing you what's been previously been marked for identification, LZ. Do you recognize what that is?
LZ, yes.
The documents the pages that you're holding, do you know what it is?
Yes, sir.
What are they?
There's a conversation between me and Casey.
All right. Can you,
Well,
between what-
multiple conversations.
okay, on various dates?
Yes, sir.
Have you had the opportunity to review those messages?
Yes, sir.
Are they a true and accurate copy of the actual instant messaging that you and the defendant had between April 29th of 2008 and June 12th of 2008?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move what has been previously been marked for identification, LZ, into evidence as the state's next.
What says the defense?
We would object and ask to be heard on that. Significant amount.
She cannot hear you if the microphone is not on.
It's on, sir.
Okay, can you hear, Madam Court Reporter?
I'll just speak louder. Sorry, Nick. We would object and ask for. We have additional argument on the matter. These cover an extensive period of time, and I think the court.
Approach the sidebar. Okay, Mr. George. I have some concerns about this whole thing. What is the purpose of this exhibit LZ? One of the problems, as the defense has pointed out, is it starts with April 29, 2008. In it.
And the defense's objection and the court's concern, and if it will help alleviate the matter, the state would not seek to introduce the L7 tone messaging that relates to April 29th of 2008, May 5th of 2008. When we get to the instant messaging that is dated June 10th of 2008, which is
Reflected on which page? So I won't have to hunt and pick.
June The June 10th instant messaging, Your Honor, begins on page 2 of 8. Nearly halfway down the page, there's a date stamp of Tuesday. I'm sorry?
The Bates number of the documents you're referring to? And excuse me for interrupting.
It was provided on disk, Mr. Buck.
I'm sorry?
It was provided on disk. I don't believe there's a document stamp on it.
Okay, you're talking about June 10th,
6 days before
2008.
2008. This conversation reflects the portions that I would seek to publish have to do with Mr. Lazaro wishing to come over to Ms. Anthony's home.
Okay, starting Tuesday, June 10th, starts off with Mr. Lazario at 10:13 p.m. Yo. Miss Anthony, yo. Mr. Lazario, don't copy me. Miss Anthony, ha ha. Mr. Lazario, suck A.D. Mr. Lazario, I. Mr. Lazario, C. Mr. Lazario, K. Miss Anthony, maybe. What does that have reference to, Mr. George?
Well, Your Honor, I believe what they're referring to is a sexual act.
Okay, and tell me, what does that tend to prove or disprove as to the elements of the crimes alleged, or something that portion sort of mystifies me?
As I was stating, the state is attempting to introduce L7 tone, the conversations that occurred on June 10th, 2008 that appear on page 3, not the sexual...
Okay, you had first said page 2.
Your Honor, I've referenced page 2 as to
Okay.
where June 10th started. I apologize.
Okay. All right, we're going over to page 3.
And if we go down to 10:37 p.m.
Okay, just a second. 10:38 to 7 p.m.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. I'm Mr. Lazario. I'm coming over. Miss Anthony, are you? Yeah. Mr. Lazario, after lab, yeah. Miss Anthony, ha fuck. Mr. Lazario, to say hello. And the next one, Miss Anthony, on a few more days, and you can bring your ass over here anytime you want and stay whenever you want. Mr. Lazario, well, I'm coming over tonight. Miss Anthony, you are trouble. You know that? Yep. That's the portion you're talking about?
Your Honor, the state wants to introduce or would seek to introduce 10:38:27 p.m. through the defendant's response at 10:39:42. It establishes the fact that Mr. Lazario would like to come over. It establishes Ms. Anthony's putting him off, saying he can't, and it helps establish the fact that the reason that she can't do what she would like to do and can't have him come over whenever he wants to come over is because the child and her parents are in the way. That's why it's relevant.
Does the defense concur with that analogy?
Absolutely not, Judge.
And that's the basis that you want to have that admitted?
Certainly, a jury, that's the conclusion that they can come up, that they can end with.
Okay. And what does that tend to prove or disprove?
Provides in essence, one of the motive for the murder.
I take it Miss Anthony is living at home at that time, Mr. George?
Yes,
And you're saying just because she's living at home with her parents and because she's told no, that's a motive for murder.
I'm sorry, sir. I missed that last part.
You're saying that because she's living at home and with her daughter in her parents' home, and because she says no, that's a motive for murder?
No, Your Honor. As the evidence, as some of the testimony has already been established from Mr. Lazaro, when they first started to date, the defendant had Kaylee with her. The defendant was unable to do what she wanted to do, to stay where she wanted to stay, because she had to bring Kaylee back home. As the weeks went on, culminating up to and to June 16th, what this helps represent and show was that she was locked in that home. She was locked, or at least held back, by her daughter. She couldn't do what she wanted to do, which is further evidenced by everything that she did do and everything that she wanted to do from June 16th until July 15th. That is why it's relevant, and it does help establish the motive. Because after June 16th, she didn't have to worry about her parents. She didn't have to worry about her daughter.
The next logical question is, why didn't she kill her parents? Since everybody was in the way, but you don't need to answer that. Pursuant to Section 90.403 of the Florida Evidence Code, exclusion on grounds of prejudice or confusion, the court will make the following ruling. 1, that is not relevant or material to any of the issues to be proved, and even if it was relevant and material, it is outweighed by the prejudice that it would cause in this. So that portion will not come in along with the rest of the portions. What's the next portion you'd like to introduce? It's going to take us some time to go through the rest of this. So what I'm going to do is bring this jury back here and get them out of here, and we can go through this part by part. Now, are we going to have any more of these text messages coming in? Are we going to have any more text messages of similar import like this one? If so, get me copies of them so I can read them. And then that way I will be familiar with them. But we can do that. Let's get this jury in here. Mr. Lazaro, you can stand down, sir. Okay, stay recognized, President of the jury.
Yes, sir.
And does the defense?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay, members of the jury, I'm going to let you go. We got some things we need to take up outside of your presence. But I understand that you've changed your mind about the Lightning game. I have a note from the gentleman from the Golden Cage who said y'all have changed your mind about the Lightning game. Is that true? Okay. I think you're going to enjoy it. I am told that not only will Bright House provide you with the game, you will have some refreshments there. Now, I don't know if there'll be pretzels, but there will be refreshments. So we're going to let you go so you can get back, get changed. And I know some of you were concerned about being there at 7, but you'll get there and you will see the game in its entirety. And I'm told that it's a 65-inch screen. So it's larger than anything I've seen. Yes, sir. Well, as I told you, we will try to make this unpleasant experience as very pleasant as possible, but the thanks goes to Bright House Networks, who is a great community partner who, when they heard about you not being able to watch the Lightning, they stepped up, and we have this community is filled with many great partners. And we know you away from home, and if you were at home, you could watch the Tampa Bay Lightning, Game 7. Should be very thrilling. They tell me there's no holds barred in Game 7 and that the referees sort of let them play. So remember my previous admonition. Don't stay up too late because we'll be here in the morning at 9. And go Lightning. Okay. Okay, you may be seated. Okay, Mr. George, what is the next portion?
Your Honor, may I have a couple of minutes to figure out exactly which parts I would like to argue? Just file.
Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute recess. You don't have another copy that I can mark up. This is the one that you're going to send in the evidence, so I don't want to touch that. So while we're taking the 5-minute recess, I'm going to ask the clerk if she can make me a copy of this. Y'all don't have copies? Okay.
They say it's on this somewhere. Just give me a copy.
Well, you can, when she's going to have somebody come up and I'll make them too. Huh? 2 copies, one for me and one for the defense. We'll be in recess till we get the copies. You may be seated. Mr. George?
This time, the state is satisfied with the predicate that we've laid thus far, and we will not be seeking to introduce the documents at this time.
Okay. All right, then. We'll be in recess to 9. Mr. Ashton?
One matter I'd like to raise at sidebar.
Okay, and after that, we don't need to have anything in open court anymore?
I don't believe so.
Mr. Baez?
I just wanted to alert the court to a filing of a supplemental witness list. There is a certificate of good cause associated with it. They have endeavored to give us information about this person, so we will let the court know at the appropriate juncture if we have objections to this, but I wanted to let you know that there has been this filing.
Okay. All right. See you at sidebar. Other than that, we'll be in recess to 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.